deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars right now that will send Calvin Ridley from Atlanta to Jacksonville for 2 picks.
Wow.
And essentially, the 2 picks are these, Field, and there are terms to the picks. Let me just call it up here. We have slow Wi-Fi here, ESPN. I don't know why it would be more.
Here, I got it first.
I got it. Here we go.
You got it? Okay.
It's a 4th rounder in 2024.
Yep.
It's also, hold on. Actually, it's a
Sorry.
I know.
It's a 5th rounder in 2023.
5th in 2023.
It's a 5th in 23.
Okay.
And then it's a 4th rounder in 24 that can become a 2nd. If he's on the roster, it stays as a 4. If he reaches certain incentives, it becomes a 3. If the Jaguars sign him to a contract extension to keep him in Jacksonville, it goes up to a 2. All right. So there is essentially the trade. Ooh. It's a 5 and a conditional 4 that could rise up to a 3 or even a 2 in the latest deal at the craziest deadline day the NFL's ever had.
We had to keep you off camera for the first 9 minutes of the show here. Mike, there are so many things that come to mind when you try to analyze this trade. I mean, it's not often a guy who's suspended for the season for gambling on games gets traded. But what do you make of this deal? And I know there's a million conditions, but based off of what you just heard from Shefty.
I think it's really smart long-term planning by the Jacksonville Jaguars. They put in a condition about putting an extension in his in the trade papers, which is a trade between. It's a contract between the 2 teams, Jacksonville and Atlanta. The league will approve that clause. That's been done before. And if Jacksonville can sign Calvin Ridley to extension, they have a great young player to go with Christian Kirk, and that hopefully that will help with the development of Trevor Lawrence. And from Atlanta, look, you're cutting your losses. It's an unfortunate situation, but you have Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and they've clearly moved on from him. So from a Jacksonville standpoint, you're not going to get a more talented player in the 4th or the 5th round or whatever these conditions are. So it's very little. The downside is very little, and the upside is great. So even if they reach an extension, I like this move from the Jaguars.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Look, if you know you're giving up a 5th, and then we'll say if after that. Well, if there's certain things that happen, it could move from a 4th to a 2nd. Look, if Calvin Ridley is as good as Calvin Ridley was before he was suspended, then Trevor Lawrence is going to be saying, thank you, Trent Baalke. Thank you very much. This is one of the best. If this is a top 5, top 3 route runner in the NFL.
Yeah.
Remember, Calvin Ridley isn't playing football because all of a sudden he's injury prone, has a case of the drops, can't play the game, doesn't want to play the game. We know why he's suspended. He was at the top of his game.
Yeah.
And having seen Jacksonville for a while now this preseason, this past weekend, they could use him in Jacksonville. This will look again. This is all about building out around your young quarterbacks. That's what that's what the NFL has become. The NFL has become about quarterbacks, and then who are you giving them? Who are you giving them as far as protection? Who are you giving them as far as pass catchers? And this guy, if they hit on him, you'd be glad to give up a 5th and a 2nd for Calvin Ridley. Are you kidding me?
Oh my
So
goodness.
let's just see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis, you remember before Calvin Ridley's suspension, the shocking suspension came down, it was being speculated that he would be traded for a 1st-round pick because he is a 1st-round talent. And as far as the Jags go, I like Christian Kirk as a player, but I do still feel watching them that they've been missing a perimeter threat. Calvin Ridley has inside-outside versatility. He can be the number 1 receiver. He steps in immediately as the number 1 receiver, in my opinion. I really like this for Jacksonville. I think the upside is incredible.
All of a sudden, you got a Jacksonville offense that will next year potentially feature not just Calvin Ridley and not just Travis Etienne, but Zay Jones and also Christian Kirk, who added in free agency this offseason. Things looking up for Trevor Lawrence in Duval. Shefty, we got 46 minutes. Anything else left before we get to break?
Here's the thing. I don't even know what you covered.